everyone. Welcome to a new novel reading. First update on my computer system, which y'all know has been having problems lately. Yesterday I took the day off and my cousin tried to help me fix it. Something new is broken and needs replaced, so gonna have to do that. I think I'll take the next 3 days off to just buckle in and fix everything, including the mic apparently not sounding good. It needs replaced. Everything needs replaced. How bad is it? Is it really bad? This is bad. Right there. How is it now? Ooh, Requiem of the Rose King has that? I did not know. I'd heard of that manga, but I did not know that's the protagonist, so I am gonna have to look that up. Does it sound any better now that I've unplugged it, plugged it back in, and moved it, or am I still in a wind tunnel? Why is everything breaking all at once? I can possibly use this. It's not gonna sound as good, probably. It's pretty bad? Okay, here's what we're doing. No, that was the right way. Let's try this.
Can you hear me? Hello, hello? Do I sound okay? Ay, everything. I have really bad luck with electronics. I've literally had a computer explode on me, and I figure it's gotta be because I'm very ADD, I'm very forgetful, I drop things. I've literally stepped on a computer once and broke it right after I had gotten it back from unnamed company that had replaced it, and so I said that it broke in the mail, and they took it back and replaced it, and I had stepped on it. God, I felt so bad about that. But anyway, I have really bad luck with electronics. So right now, the mic is really shitty. The switch box, which is what you use to be able to plug in multiple HDMI cords and switch between consoles, has stopped working, which may also be why we're not getting game audio, I think. So I'm gonna have to replace that. There's now a humming. That's probably because this is a really shitty microphone. It's not really meant like for professional streaming. If it's too bad, then we can wait and do stuff. But yeah, I really wanted to do this reading and watching the Scum villain with y'all because I don't want to get too far behind the show. I think it'd be fun to read the book along with the show and do that. I meant to start it sooner, but life and all that. Sounds like electronics have really bad luck with you. They do! They do. I broke a what's the SP, Game Boy SP once? You know, the one that had the flap? Had it in my pocket, pulled it out, it snapped in half. And I sat on a DS once and broke it, even though it wasn't supposed to be. Man. Oh, well, thank you, that's very kind of you, Jessica. Hello, everyone. Ken, Phil, Daniel, Jeff, Tina. I think you told me how to say that once, and I cannot remember. Forgive me. You'll have to tell me how to say it once again, and I will get it soon. Lobsoul. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Pablo, thank you all. So we're going to start reading Scum Villain Self-Saving System, which is the book that inspired the recent TV show Scumbag System, which is super cute. I've seen the first 2 episodes, and it's great. It's adorable. We're going to watch the next one on Discord after this, but I wanted to catch up on the novel, because it's really fun and really goofy. Hello, Millie Noel, and we all Hyena? So, Taina. Okay, I could do that. Taina. Alright. I will probably also say some of these names wrong. I tried Googling to find a guide on the names for this one, and I couldn't find anything. But we'll get to that as we come to it. The translation I'm reading is from Tumblr, from Faelice, Faelice. It's not finished, but I mean, we're only going to be reading up with the story of the show, and there's 45 chapters, so we will definitely be caught up but I think it is honestly the better translation. The other translation's a little rougher. It might be machine translated. I don't know. This one I think is a little better, but that's just me personally. Ooh, you're watching Guardian? I need to finish that. Well, so we're going to be reading Scum Villain Self-Saving System, the first novel written by MXTX is what I'm going to call her because I don't know how to say her name. That's how people shorthand it. She also wrote the Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, which inspired the TV show The Untamed, and Heaven Official's Blessing, which is the other book I'm reading that we read on Mondays. She's quite good. This is her first book, so it's a little rougher. I think it's more of a comedy parody of a specific genre of Chinese novel, so there are certain things I might have to explain because they are in-jokes for the genre. But it's really, really fun. I have heard of that show. I have not watched it yet. I just recently started a list of these shows that I need to get through and read and see the shows for. But anyway, we will start the book. Chapter 1, Scum Villain. Proud Immortal Demon Wei was a male power fantasy of a stallion novel. To be more specific, Proud Immortal Demon Wei was a monster-fighting, escapist cultivation novel with a ridiculous and incomparable length, a golden finger that broke every rule, and a harem number nearing 3 digits, where every single female character fell for the protagonist. This year's hottest stallion novel. There was no other. Alright, we'll take a quick pause and explain a couple different phrases. Obviously, cultivation novel is that kind of fantasy magic style thing where, like, all these monks can fly around and shoot laser beams. You know, you see it in Untamed, you see it everywhere. Cultivation is basically magic, kind of based in Taoism and Chinese mythology and all that. Varies universe to universe. This one is pretty straightforward. Stallion novel is like a male fantasy, male power fantasy. The main character is handsome and powerful, and all the female characters love him. Golden Finger is like the special power the character has. It's like it's a protagonist exclusive ability or weapon. So like it's the being the chosen one, you know, I've got the golden finger, you know, that's the golden finger thing. So those are the main phrases that like are genre specific here. The male lead of this novel, Luo Binghe, was neither the kind who started heroic and invincible like a proud dragon of the heavens, nor the kind who was a loser, a good-for-nothing without merit, yet had managed to trend with tens of thousands of readers on Zhongdian literature, influencing countless male fantasy novels afterward to follow in its footsteps. He was the kind who was pitch black, dark, and vicious. But before he'd blackened, he was the kind who suffered misery after misery. Blackened is a term used in this genre to refer to events of the story, changing them from like a generally innocent or good character to someone really horrible. In this case, he becomes very violent and cruel. Next, let a veteran reader of this novel, Shen Yuan, omit the countless fan-servicey details and concisely summarize this million-word epic for everyone. Immediately after his birth, Luo Binghe was abandoned by his parents, swaddled in white cloth and put in a wooden basin, then lowered into the water. Those were the coldest days of the year, and it was only thanks to the river's fishermen pulling him out that he hadn't frozen to death as a baby. Because he'd been drifting along the Luo River, and it was the season when it was filled with thin ice, he was given that name. Luo Binghe spent his early years wandering the streets hungry and cold. It was a dreary childhood. A washerwoman who worked for a wealthy family took pity on him, and since she had no children of her own, adopted and raised him as her own son. Mother and son were poor and suffered humiliation at the hands of their rich patrons. Having grown up in such an unhealthy environment, this became the source of Luo Binghe's future twisted personality post-blackening, including his tendencies to fight over every scrap, to seek revenge for the smallest of grievances, and to hide murderous intent behind a smile. For a bowl of lukewarm meat congee, he'd withstood the beatings of the family's young masters. In the end, he was still too late, and failed to give his adopted mother even a single taste before she died. By complete coincidence, he was selected by one of the cultivation world's 4 great sects, We're gonna keep guessing until I manage to find a website that can tell me. Aw, thank you, Daniel. And, Bing He. You know, you're probably right. Bing He. Okay, I will try and say it that way. Okay. He was adopted by one of the four great sects and apprenticed under the Shuya sword, Shen Qingqiu. Shen Qingqiu, I think is how it's said. Yes, it is. It's a million-word epic. They talk about in the book and the show, hopefully, eventually, about how this book goes on and on and on and never ends. He'd thought he could finally start on the righteous path, but hadn't expected that Shen Qingqiu was fair without, but foul within, trash of the lowest caliber. He was jealous of Luo Binghe's unparalleled and exceptional talent, and secretly feared this disciple whose cultivation improved by leaps and bounds every day, always finding all sorts of ways to taunt and demean him, even enlisting fellow disciples to belittle him. Throughout the years of studying, he endured the humiliation. It was another heart-wrenching story filled with blood and tears. Under much difficulty, Luo Binghe managed to turn 17, when he finally encountered the ceremony the cultivation world held once every 4 years, the Immortal Alliance Conference. Here at the conference, Luo Binghe fell victim to Shen Qingqiu's scheming, and fell into a crack in the boundary between the demon and human realms, the Endless Abyss. That's right, only now did the story truly begin. Not only did Luo Binghe survive within the Endless Abyss, he found his personal sword, the peerless mystical Zinmo, and there learned about his origins. As it turned out, Luo Binghe had been born to the demon realm's saintly ruler and a human realm woman. Within his veins flowed both the blood of the ancient, heaven-fallen demons, as well as that of the human race. His birth father, Tianglan Jun, had been sealed beneath a great mountain, trapped for all eternity. His birth mother was a disciple from a righteous cultivation sect. That year, suspected of having secret ties to demons, she was expelled and died from postpartum hemorrhage after giving birth to Luo Binghe. Prior to her death, she let her son off the lone ship she'd birthed him on, and only in this way left Luo Binghe a chance of survival. Luo Binghe used Zinmo to release his body's seal on his demonic blood, and within the dark abyss, cultivated single-mindedly and enlightened himself on otherworldly techniques before heading back to Kangqiong Mountain Sect. From here on, Luo Binghe steadily headed down the path of blackening, never looking back. Every single one of his old enemies suffered great torment and died horrible deaths by his hand. With his steadily improving acting and scheming skills, Luo Binghe won the trust of many people, feigning compliance while secretly plotting against them. He seized power and rose in position, beginning a reign of terror. As the story unfolded, Luo Binghe blackened further and further. He returned to the demon realm and inherited the position of saintly ruler, but still unsatisfied, began to massacre each one of the human realm's great righteous sects, bathing them in blood, eradicating all voices of opposition. In the end, Luo Binghe became a generation-spanning legend among immortals and demons, who talked about his unification of the three realms, the uncountable size of his harem, and his boundless number of descendants. Dumb fuck author! Dumb fuck novel! With his dying breath, Shen Yuan spat this final curse. Who could have imagined that an upstanding young man like him, who properly purchased VIP currency and read the official version, that what he'd persisted to finish, even on his deathbed, was a novel so stallion it left him speechless with rage, a money-swindling, over-padded mess. How could he not curse? Proud Immortal Demon Way. Author? Airplane shooting towards the sky. Which is a euphemism. It's a euphemism, basically, for masturbation. But that's the author of the novel in universe. Hello, folks, popping in. Just looking at this handle would assault you with a dirty feeling. Grade school level writing with landmines everywhere. Landmines referring to a moment that makes the audience go, what the fuck, in a bad way. Let's see. Is this like Heaven's Official? Yes, this is from the same author that wrote Heaven Official's Blessing. This was her first book. That is her most recent one. This one's really funny. Shen Yuan couldn't even bear to call that incoherent mess of a setting the author created a cultivation setting. Have you seen a cultivation world where people used horses and carriages all day? Have you seen a cultivation world where after achieving inedia, people still needed to eat and sleep? Have you seen a cultivation world where the author occasionally mixed up even the foundation, establishment, and nascent soul stages? Every single person, when in front of the protagonist, would act like his aura of awesomeness had devoured their intelligence, especially Luo Binghe's master, that Shen Qingchu, basically an idiot among idiots, scum among scum. His only purpose was to dig his own grave, and when he didn't manage to finish, get killed by the protagonist. Then why did Shen Yuan read this book, and even read to the very end? Don't misunderstand, Shen Yuan didn't enjoy degrading himself. The reason was also what caused him the most frustration. The novel had an incredible amount of foreshadowing, plot lines everywhere, mystery after mystery, layer upon layer of red herrings, and at the very end, not a single one paid off. It was enough to make him puke a fountain of blood. Why were priceless herbs, spirit elixirs, and peerless beauties everywhere like they didn't cost a cent? Why were the villains' speeches and poses as they dug their graves and got offed all exactly the same? The many girls we barely caught a glance of who'd agreed to enter the harem, what happened to them? Alright, let's skip that for a moment. The many atrocities, who were the culprits? The giant list of characters hyped up as being very awesome without equal, exactly what was their purpose? Why was nothing of them shown even at the end? Towards the sky, bro. Airplane, bro. Great master, can we have a discussion? Fill in plot holes, okay? Shen Yuan felt like he could come back to life from sheer rage. In the endless darkness, a mechanical voice sounded by his ear. Activation code. Dumbfuck author, dumbfuck novel. System automatically triggered. Who is this? The tone was similar to Google Translate. Shen Yuan looked around. It seemed like he was floating in a virtual space, so dark he couldn't see his hand before him, the voice coming from all directions. Welcome to the system. The system operates in line with the design concept, you can, you up, no can, no BB. Okay, this is also a reference to something. If you're capable, you can do it. If not, then shut the fuck up. We hope to provide you with the best possible experience. It is our sincere wish that during your experience you can fulfill your desire, and according to your wishes, transform a stupid work into a high-quality, magnificent, first-rate classic. We hope you enjoy. In the midst of the vertigo, a man's voice asked lightly beside his ear, Shidi? Shidi, can you hear me? Shen Yuan shuddered and settled his mind, forcibly peeling open his eyes, the scene before him appearing as a massive, whirling flurry. It took a while for everything to finally coalesce and slowly become clear. He lay on a bed. Looking up, a white, gauzy canopy with finely crafted perfume pouches hanging from the four corners. Looking down, he wore a white robe of an ancient style. Next to the pillow lay a paper fan. Looking to his left, a handsome and elegant young man dressed in xuanduan sat by his bedside, looking at him with concern. I'm guessing that's some kind of classic style of clothing. A very formal type of hanfu originally associated with government officials. Shen Yuan closed his eyes, then sharply reached for the folding fan, opening it with a snap. He lightly waved it, fanning away the cold sweat pouring down his face. The man's eyes lit up with joy, and he warmly asked, Shidi finally woke up. Is there any discomfort? Shidi is a term for, like, little brother in terms of, like, a cultivation sect. So, like, a younger student who is male, that he's calling him as kind of his little brother, sort of. Not exactly like family, but like in terms of martial arts. Shen Yuan reservedly said, nothing too bad. The information overload was a bit much. He dazedly tried to sit up. Seeing this, the man quickly reached out to support his back, letting him lean against the headboard. Having read many of Zongdian's transmigration novels, Shen Yuan had long resolved that if one day he woke up to find himself lying in a strange place, before he understood what was happening, he definitely wouldn't giggle carefreely and say, Are you filming a novel? Geez, I can't read. Are you filming a movie? These props look so real. Your crew's really giving it their all. The words of a person slow-wittedly trying to find their footing. He concentrated only on acting like he'd just woken up, expression absent-minded. Where is this? The man startled and said, "Did you sleep yourself into a daze? This is your Qin Jing peak." Internally, Shen Yuan was shocked, but continued to act muddled. "Why was I asleep for so long?" The man said, "That's what I wanted to ask you. You were in perfect health. How did you suddenly come down with a high fever? I know that the Immortal Alliance conference approaching, you've been training your disciples and are anxious for results, but with Kang Chong, when you're like used to reading English and you're just reading along because you can read English, you know how to pronounce it, and then a word comes up where your brain has to stop and process. My brain keeps trying to process it as English and tripping up on it. So apologies if my flow gets messed up. With Kang Xiong's Mountain Sect's foundations and renown today, even if someone didn't attend this time, no one would dare question us. Why concern yourself with those empty words? The more Shen Yuan listened, the more something felt off. Why did these lines sound so familiar? No, why did this setup sound so familiar? Next, a single earnest sentence from the man confirmed all his suspicions. "Cheng Chu Shidi, are you listening to Shishong?" That's a term for elder brother. So he's saying, "Hey, little bro, are you listening to elder bro?" At this moment, something dinged, and the mechanical Google Translate-like voice from the dreamscape sounded again. The system was successfully activated. Roll-bound, Luo Benghe's master, Kang Xiong's Mountain Sect's Qing Jing's Peak Lord, Shen Qingchu. Weapon, the sword Zhu Ha. Starting B points, 100. Fuck, what bullshit is this? How come you're speaking directly into my brain? Does airplane shooting towards the sky know you're plagiarizing Proud Immortal Demon Way set up like this? Of course, Shen Yuan didn't say this out loud, but the voice quickly responded. You have touched the system's command execution and have been bound to the account Sen Qingchu. As the plot progresses, many different types of points will gradually become available. Please ensure that none of these points fall below 0. Otherwise, the system will automatically dole out punishment. Stop. Enough. Shen Yuan was sure now. He'd hit the jackpot. He'd transmigrated. Transmigrated into something he'd just finished, and it was a pitch-black stallion novel he'd hated, even coming with some kind of shitty system. As a 21st century veteran VIP reader of Zhongjian literature, he'd read through various types of do-over and transmigration male power fantasy novels year in and year out, so originally Shen Yuan could have happily and easily accepted this fact. But of all people, the shell he borrowed happened to be the male lead Scum villain Shizun Shen Qingju? This made the situation rather complicated. The good-natured looking elder brotherly type next to him was Kang Qiong Mountain Sect's current sect leader, Shen Qingchu's Shishong, the Zhuanshu sword, Yu Qingyuan. Fuck. There was a very important reason Shen Yuan had especially gone fuck at Yu Qingyuan. In the original work, Yu Qingyuan's death had been caused by his good shidi Shen Qingchu, okay? And what a horrific death it was. Tens of thousands of arrows had pierced him until not even the bones remained. And at this moment, the victim was facing his own murderer, showering him with concern. The pressure was immense. But looking again now, the story hadn't unfolded to that point yet. Yu Qingyuan was in perfect health, meaning at this time, Shen Qingchu hadn't yet revealed himself as a hypocrite, and his reputation was still unruined. Yu Qingyuan was a bleeding heart, nothing to be afraid of, though this character ended up suffering quite a bit. During his read, Shen Yuan had been rather fond of him. He relaxed a little when a string of words floated eerily to the front of his mind. Within the dark, gloomy room, a metal chain hung from a beam. At the end of the chain dangled a ring. The ring was fastened around a person's waist, if that could still be considered a person. This person's appearance was filthy and disheveled like that of a madman. The most frightening thing was, all 4 of his limbs had been severed. His shoulders and thighs were only 4 bare knobs of flesh. When touched, he would let out a hoarse ah sound. His tongue had been torn out, rendering him unable to form complete words. Proud Immortal Demon Way, a featured paragraph on Shen Qingchu's fate. Shen Qingchu rested his forehead on his hand. He wasn't in any position to lament how horrific other people's deaths were. The most horrific death was his, okay? Must avoid any serious errors, snuff out any sign of a mistake. From now on, cling madly to the male lead's thighs, be a good teacher and helpful friend who is earnest and gentle in teaching, meticulously shower him with concern. He'd just had these thoughts when Shen Qingchu's mind suddenly erupted with a long stream of alarms, as if 100 police cars carrying 100 shrieking divine beasts were zooming past. So cacophonous he shuddered, clutching his head in pain. Yu Qingyuan said worriedly, "Shidi, does your head still hurt?" Teeth clenched, Shen Qingchu didn't answer. The system shrilly notified, "Warning! Your plan just now was incredibly dangerous and qualified as an active violation. Please do not attempt, or the system will automatically dole out punishment." How was that a violation? Currently, you are at the beginner rank, and the OOC feature is frozen. You will need to complete beginner rank quests to unfreeze. Before unfreezing, doing anything that violates the original Shen Qingchu's character settings will result in a fixed number of B points being deducted. As a semi-otaku, Shen Qingchu had occasionally seen several fan work-related terms, you understand. Of course he knew what OOC meant, the abbreviation for out of character, defined as breaking character, acting in a way that was inconsistent with the original character's personality. In other words, before that whatever feature gets unfrozen, my manner and actions can't differ from what Shen Qingchu would do? Correct! It had already let him transmigrate into Shen Qingchu's shell, replacing him, but still cared about a detail like OOC? Shen Qingchu asked again. You just said something like, the points can't fall below 0. If they do, what happens? You will automatically be deported back to the original world. Original world? But in the original world, Shen Yuan's body was already dead! In other words, if he lost all his B or whatever points, what awaited him was death. Then if I just ignore the male lead and avoid doing anything, things should be fine, right? He raised his head and swept his gaze around, but didn't see anyone that matched Luo Binghe's appearance among the disciples waiting on him by his side. Acting unconcerned, he said, "Where is Luo Binghe?" Yu Qingyuan halted and gave him a strange look. Shen Qingchu remained straight-faced, but was secretly filled with glee. Could it be that time wasn't ripe, and the male lead had yet to apprentice and enter Kangqiang Mountain Sect? Yu Qingyuan said, "Shidi, don't be angry." An ominous premonition stirred in Shen Qingchu's heart. Yu Qingyuan said, "I know you don't like him, but the child's already worked hard enough and he hasn't made any large mistakes. Don't punish him any more, all right?" Hearing this, Shen Qingchu's lips went dry. He licked them and said, "Out with it, where is he?" Yu Qingyuan was silent for a moment, then said, "Whenever you finish stringing him up and beating him, haven't you always shut him in the woodshed?" Shen Qingyu's vision went dark. It's too late for him. He's already begun to abuse the protagonist, which means he's already on his path to becoming a nub of flesh. There was a phrase up there that I didn't explain because I was in the pattern of reading. He's going to talk a lot about clinging to the male lead's thighs. That's a term of like trying to ride the wave, kind of to make him like him so that he'll be taken care of. Like, if I make the lead like me enough, he'll take care of me. He's not gonna hurt me. Unfortunately, he's already on the way to not being liked. Alright, let me get some more water. Alrighty. Hello to everyone that's joined us. We're going on to Chapter 2, Abused Male Lead. In his previous life, Shen Yuan had been well off growing up and could qualify as a modestly wealthy second gen. Let's see what second gen refers to. He's a trust fund kid. He had 2 older brothers set to inherit the family business and a little sister he doted on. The entire family had been very close. From early on, he'd known, even if he idled the rest of his life away, he'd never want for food. Perhaps it was due to his carefree environment, devoid of competition and pressure, but he'd always believed that as long as his competition had more than 10 participants, placing in the top 10 was good enough. Therefore, he never understood what scum villains like Shen Qingchu were thinking while digging their own graves. The original Shen Qingchu, if it was about cultivation, he had that. Qualifications? He had that as well. The self-restraint required to put on an act? He also had that. He lacked neither standing nor reputation, and with the world's largest sect supporting him, he'd never want for money. So why, when it came to the poise expected of an immortal, did he have none at all? Why act like one of those bitter courtyard complex concubines from the old days? Excuse me. The ones with too much time to spare, always picking on the protagonist who is as innocuous as a blade of grass, scheming day in and day out about how to torment him, and even getting others to do it for him. Even if Luo Binghe had God-given talent, even if his learning ability was exceptional to the point it seemed cheap, there was still no need to envy him to this extent, huh? Still, the blame didn't really lie with him, but with the author. These types of villains were everywhere in the novel, as numerous as carp in a river. It was just his character had been especially detailed and especially rotten. What could you do? The ultimate boss in this book was the protagonist himself. How could a firefly outshine the sun and moon? The cultivation world had called him the Zuya sword, so naturally he had the appearance and bearing to match. Let's see what that say. It means elegant and refined. So he's very elegant and very refined. For instance, now Shen Qingchu turned his head left and right, finding even his muddied reflection in the bronze mirror quite satisfying. It was a face with good features, pitch black eyes and brows, thin nose and lips, very much the air of a scholar. Combined with a slender body and long legs, he could at least be considered beautiful. Though his real age was unclear, this was a cultivation novel. Shen Qingchu had achieved mid-core formation, which meant he'd perfectly preserved a youthful appearance, certainly many times better looking than what he'd headcanoned while reading, though he still couldn't compare to Luo Binghe. Thinking of Luo Binghe, Shen Qingchu was immediately struck with a pounding headache. He wanted to go see the Luo Binghe, who was currently shut in the woodshed, but as soon as he took a single step, that ear-piercing notification rang in his mind again. Warning! OOC warning! Shen Qingchu would not take the initiative to visit Luo Binghe. Shen Qingchu angrily said, Fine, then I'll get someone else to bring him. No problems then, right? He thought for a moment, then called Ming Fan, a youth around 16 years old, tall and thin, and promptly ran in through the door, saying, This disciple is here. What is Shifu's command? Shifu's like teacher, mentor, I believe. Where we go? Shen Qingchu couldn't help but send a couple more glances his way. He could be considered respectable looking, just that his face was a bit unfortunate. Inside his heart, Shen Qingchu tisked, lamenting. As expected, a cannon fodder's appearance. Cannon fodder is a character that exists basically just to die. This was the original Shen Qingchu's most senior disciple, Luo Binghe's Shishong, Ming Fan. This was the legendary lowest-level cannon fodder. Needless to say, when it came to things like shutting Luo Binghe out of the dorms late at night or purposely giving him false cultivation techniques, Ming Fan had a hand in all of them. Whenever Shen Qingchu felt inclined to torment Luo Binghe, he always had his most useful assistant, his most enthusiastic supporter. Knowing this child's fate in the original work wasn't much better than his own, Shen Qingchu couldn't help looking at him with a pitying gaze of a fellow victim. Go bring Binghe here. Internally, Ming Fan was unnerved. Whenever their master had called for Luo Binghe, it was always that little beast, ungrateful brat, this wretch, whelp. He'd hardly ever used his full name, so why the intimate address all of a sudden? But this was their master's command. Ming Fan didn't dare question it, and immediately jogged to the woodshed, kicking the door twice. Come out! Shizun's calling you! Shizun's like another phrase for teacher, but I think it's kind of more implied to be like a older... I'm gonna Google it real quick, because Shifu and Shizun aren't quite the same. Don't give me another book. There's another very famous book with the Shizun in the title, and that's what immediately came up. We are not reading The Husky and His White Cat Shizun. Okay, it's like teacher and master, but so is Shifu. I feel like Shifu is more of a kind of like an older person. I think Shizun tends to be younger, but I'm not entirely certain. Okay. Shen Qingchu paced inside the room, vigorously examining the system within his mind. B points, also known as the points given for being a poser. The higher the B points, the higher the quality. The more magnificent, the better the rating. Alright, poser. Basically it means that if you're acting, playing cool, or showing off, which I think we all knew that, but that's what it's saying. Alright. How can I raise my B points? 1. Change the nonsensical plot, and raise the villains and sidecasts' IQs. 2. Avoid breaking the suspension of belief. 3. Ensure the protagonist's satisfaction points. 4. Discover and complete hidden plot points. Shen Qingqiu analyzed each one by one. That is to say, not only did he have to clean up the original Shen Qingqiu's messes, the Shen Qingqiu who'd amassed a mountain of grudges, he also had to prevent other characters from creating more messes. He didn't even know if he could preserve his own sorry life, yet he still needed to ensure that the protagonist's OP-ness, spotlight, and number of girls weren't reduced. All those unsolved mysteries, those plot holes the author not only hadn't filled, now he had to grab a shovel and personally sweat away, filling them in himself. Great Master Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky had said, Proud Immortal Demon Way's purpose was very clear. Each word had been written with a single goal in mind, and that was to be satisfying. Especially the way the blackened OP male lead would play innocent, a fake pig hunting tigers, exacting revenge schemes against lowlives, all satisfying enough to overturn the heavens. So the work's popularity had swelled red-hot, growing longer and longer until no foot-binding cloth could compare in length. Shen Qingqiu thought just keeping a decent track of the plot was already very stressful. Landmines were everywhere. He couldn't guarantee he'd get rid of all of them. Shen Qingqiu said, What kind of plot would qualify as not nonsensical? The standard is subjectively determined. It depends on the reader's reactions. Then how many points do I need to collect to launch the introductory level quests? The timing is situationally determined. When the requirements have been met, the system will automatically notify you. Subjectively determined. Situationally determined. Truly an all-purpose balm. Let's see, he's got a little number. Okay. That's some kind of wordplay I don't quite understand. Shen Qingqiu scoffed a laugh, then hearing the door open, looked back and saw a youth slowly walk in. Even though his movements were unsteady, he still managed to stand perfectly straight and respectfully call, Shizun. The small smile that had been forming at the corner of Shen Qingqiu's mouth froze. He'd be killed! This was the face that would infatuate everyone in the future, from 80-year-old women to swaddled infants. The Gary Stu protagonist's face, and he'd beaten it to this extent. He'd definitely be killed. But even though this face bore clear evidence of abuse and was covered in injuries, the protagonist was, as expected, still the protagonist. Luo Binghe's 2 eyes were as bright as morning stars, the tender beginnings of a handsome young man. That firm yet humble countenance demonstrating his noble and unyielding attitude, the pencil-straight back and stance, a proud core that would rather break than bend. In that instant, a flood of parallelisms and stylistic devices surged in Shen Qingqiu's heart, passage after passage, jumbling together to form countless phrases of praise that almost spilled forth. That's my favorite part about this. You kind of get the feeling as we go on that Shen Qingqiu only ended up finishing this stupid novel because he really did like Luo Binghe as a protagonist. It's really cute how fond he is of this character. Luckily, Shen Qingqiu managed to rein them in, internally yelling about how close it had been. The hardware of this protagonist halo really was too excellent. He almost couldn't hold back. He watched Luo Binghe limp through the door, then struggle to kneel. Shen Qingqiu's mouth twitched, thinking, I can't afford your respects. If you pay me your respects today, I might be kneecapped by you in the future, and immediately stopped him by saying, No need. He flicked his wrist, tossing over a small bottle. This is medicine. He stopped, then added in a mocking tone, Don't let outsiders see and think my Qingjin Peak abuses its disciples. Shen Qingqiu had entered his role quickly. Even though he'd done something incredibly daring, like handing over medicine, he'd also chosen a nasty attitude, and could be considered to be in line with Shen Qingqiu's trait of hypocrisy, to do evil things yet fear others knowing. Indeed, the system didn't send an OOC notification. Shen Qingqiu let out a sigh of relief. Luo Binghe had expected that his Shizun had called him to continue teaching, and could never have thought that it'd be to give him medicine. At first he froze, then respectfully used both hands to receive the small bottle, saying with honest gratitude, Thank you for the medicine, Shizun. At this point in time, Luo Binghe's face was still full of innocence, his smile sincere and gentle, like the warm dawning sun. Shen Qingqiu stared for a while, then turned his head away. This male lead's personality pre-blackening was that of a model and upright youth. Shine a bit of sunlight on him and he'd glow. Give him a scrap of goodwill and he'd return it tenfold. That type to say he was a little sheep who would not be excessive. Luo Benghe then happily continued, "This disciple will henceforth redouble his efforts and not let Shizun be disappointed." No, if you redouble your efforts, I'm guessing your original Shizun would really be disappointed. If Shen Qingqiu had not read Proud Immortal Demon Way, upon seeing this scene, he would have found it heart-wrenching, and probably shed a couple of sympathetic tears at Luo Benghe's plight. As it was, he'd seen everything from beginning to end as an omniscient reader, and been privy to Luo Benghe's plentiful and colorful thoughts post-blackening. To summarize, Luo Benghe was pitiful now, but in the future he'd grind his heel into others' faces while laughing with reckless malevolence. Though he wore the mask of a kind and humble gentleman, inside all he thought about was how to rip out your tendons, pull out your bones, peel off your skin, and hang it all to dry. Luo Benghe smiled and said, "The humiliation this disciple suffered in the past, today I'll return it 100-fold. For hurting my hands and feet, I'll tear off your limbs and grind them to dust." Proud Immortal Demon Way, featured paragraph number 2. Afterward, he'd really carved Shen Qingqiu into a human stick, meaning he has no limbs. Shifu's a general and respectful way to address a person who's master of craft. Okay. So I guess Shizun's a little more relaxed, possibly? I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Glad y'all are enjoying it. I'm really enjoying reading this book. I forgot how much fun it is. Shen Qingqiu moved to sit in a sandalwood chair, and picking an aloof tone, said, "Binghe, how's your cultivation progress?" That single Binghe caused frightened goosebumps to rise all over his body. Luo Binghe also obviously shuddered, but still managed a smile tinged with shyness. This disciple is stupid and still failed to understand." That was an incorrect cultivation manual. That he hadn't had a key deviation was thanks to his incredible durability as the protagonist. To actually understand would be a miracle. Shen Qingqiu yelled within his heart, "Boy, you come under me. This master will give you the correct methods." So in other words, the previous teacher gave him the wrong information, so obviously he wouldn't get it right. And a key deviation, that's basically a nasty way to die in a cultivation novel. Your energy kills you. The demonic notification started blaring incessantly. Shen Qingqiu said to the system, "I was just thinking it. Of course I know that's a violation." Next, he casually said, "Today, this master punished you out of impatience. All in all, time waits for no one. Thinking about it, you've been under me for a while. How old are you this year?" Luo Binghe obediently said, "This disciple is 14. "Ah, 14. Oh. That is to say, Shen Qingqiu and Luo Benghe master-disciple pair by this point had already gone through the incident at the mountain entrance where he'd been forced to kneel as punishment, the Qingjing Peak gang beating by his fellow disciples, the back-talking Shizun incident where he'd been strung up and beaten, the instrument-breaking incident where he'd been punished with hard labor. Such a glorious track record. Waves goodbye. Shen Qingqiu rested his forehead on one hand while waving him away with the other. I wish to be alone. This poor boy. Let's see if we got one more in us, because I want to kind of catch up to where we are in the show. Chapter 3, Cannon Fodder in the Way. Shen Qingqiu was an easygoing person. Since his residential address had already changed to Proud Immortal Demon Way, plus he'd already kicked the bucket in the original world, he might as well try getting by here. He'd arrived in a cultivation setting, received a body with decent martial ability and swordsmanship for free, and was also part of a famous righteous sect. If he wanted to stand out, he could stand out. If he wanted to lie low, he could hole himself up in Kangchong Mountain sects, Ching Jing Peak. That is so hard for someone with so little experience with this language to say. Okay, if I understand right, the mountain sect is like the whole mountain range, and then the peak is the one school. So he's in charge of one peak, one school in this larger campus, I suppose. What was there to complain about? The only slightly difficult thing was finding a girlfriend. In this sort of male power fantasy stallion novel, any woman would inevitably belong to the male lead, as long as she wasn't ugly. Everyone understood this. Still, Shen Qingchu's needs weren't large. He'd be satisfied just idling away to a ripe old age. It wouldn't be that different from his previous life anyway. However, as long as Luo Binghe was present, forget standing out, as long as he remained in the land of the original work's setting, even if he secluded himself in some imaginary realm, after Luo Binghe took power, he'd still be able to carve Shen Qingchu into a human stick. It's not that I don't want to cling to the male lead's thighs, but who made him so fucking black? The type who seeks thousandfold retribution? After his daily cursing at Great Master Airplane, Shen Qingchu quickly set some goals. In short, familiarize himself with the environment, work with the system as much as possible, diligently increase his accomplishments, earn B points, and unfreeze the OOC function as soon as possible. If the situation didn't look good, he'd have to search for another path. Kang Xiong's 12 peaks were like 12 giant swords forged by nature, steep and magnificent, piercing the skies. Shen Qingchu's Qingjing Peak wasn't the tallest, but it was the most tranquil, heavily forested with tall bamboo. On top of that, as basically all of Shen Qingchu's disciples needed to learn the 4 arts, from time to time would drift in the clear sounds of reading and the murmur of I don't know how to say this. It's a musical instrument. Qin. Maybe Chin? Chin? It was an excellent destination for youths of ancient arts and literature, and perfectly aligned with what the original Shen Qingchu needed as a poser. Several disciples respectfully asked after Shen Qingchu as they met in passing. He schooled his countenance into the original's cold, aloof look, nodding slightly while walking with his hands clasped behind his back, and managed to get by, only troubled over how he was supposed to match the book's names to these swaying faces. Although this wasn't the Shen Qingchu's most pressing concern. For self-defense, he first needed to figure out the original good's martial ability and swordsmanship. If he remembered correctly, before Luo Binghe blackened, Kang Chong, I think is how it's said, Mountain Sec would go through a couple of large incidents, things like demons provoking them, or the Immortal Alliance Conference, and he had to deal with all of them. If all he had was a shell with no cultivation, forget following the plot. Even without the male lead's involvement, a small no-name monster could get him killed. Shen Qingchu entered deep into the forest alone. Only after confirming there were no people did he remove the sword at his waist, holding the scabbard in his left hand and the hilt in his right, and slowly pulled it out. Zhu Ya had been with Shen Qingchu since he was young and newly famous, and could be considered prestigious itself. The flash of its blade was snow-white, luminous but not blinding, definitely a top-class good. When one channeled spiritual energy into the weapon, the blade would glow faintly. Shen Qingchu was pondering exactly how to channel spiritual energy when the sword in his hand began to shimmer white. Seemed like he'd inherited the original cultivation and martial ability as well. His mind had filled everything in without him needing to consciously remember. Shen Qingchu wanted to see its power and casually slashed once. Who knew this single slash would be so terrifying? The sword's arc dazzling like a flash of lightning released from his palm, so bright he had to close his eyes. When he opened them again, he saw a deep ditch carved into the ground as if split apart by lightning. Holy fuck! Shen Qingchu remained expressionless, but his heart surged with gratification. Such awesomeness! Worthy of a character acting as a peak soul master. With this level of cultivation, if he diligently trained for 20 years, maybe as a last resort in the future, if he absolutely had to face the overpowered Luo Binghe, he might eventually be able to flee. Yes, all he wanted was to be able to flee! Still, he wanted to practice more, but then heard the subtle sound of footsteps snapping dry twigs. In truth, the sound was still a long way off, but his 5 senses were now sensitive, and it would be difficult to not notice. Shen Qingchu examined the deep ditch in the ground, then resheathed his sword with a clang, hiding himself deeper into the granary. Those footsteps came closer and closer. There was more than one person. As expected, a moment later, what first appeared was Luo Binghe's face, seeming to shine with its own light. But the first sound was the crisp, delicate voice of a young maiden. "Aluo, Aluo, look, there's a huge ditch in the ground here." That's like you put the A in front of the name. That's one way of, like, giving a person a nickname. It's kind of friendly, cutesy kind of thing. Hearing this address, Shen Qingchu almost staggered in his hiding place. The system concisely said, Shen Qingchu's youngest female disciple, Ning Ying Ying. Welcome, Akatsuki. Thanks for joining us. Perfect timing. Shen Qingchu. What was the use of your introduction? Everyone knows that only one person addresses Luo Binghe this way. The pretty girl following behind Luo Binghe came into view. She looked slightly younger than Luo Binghe, lovely and adorable, her braided hair bound with orange ribbons, running and skipping, full of naivete. Every proper cultivation novel must have an adorable young Shime type. The young Shime gave Shen Qingchu some complicated feelings. This was because he had designs on Nin Ying Ying. No, more like the original Shen Qingchu had designs on Ning Ying Ying. Shen Qingchu's settings were that of a shady hypocrite. Since on the surface he looked pure-hearted, free of desire, and immune to evil temptations, underneath he must be immoral, shameless, scummy, and despicable. He was a teacher, but had dirty intentions towards his obedient and lively disciple. He'd tried to carry them out several times and almost succeeded. Daring to try and get a taste of the male lead's woman, one can imagine the result. Back then, while reading, Shen Qingchu had thought it a little strange. Why didn't Luo Binghe castrate him? This absolutely didn't match with Binghe's evil yet charming style. Therefore, he'd gone to the reader's comment section and joined the mob in flooding it with posts of, Please castrate Shen Qingchu! No castration, we drop! Upon reflection now, it was extremely terrifying when he thought about it closely. If the appeal had succeeded then, he'd absolutely have to chop off the hand he'd used to make those posts now. Luo Binghe glanced once and only gave a half-hearted smile, but Ning Ying Ying wanted his attention and fumbled around for something to say. You say, Aluo, which Shishong was practicing their sword glares here? Luo Binghe picked up an axe and started chopping at a tree, answering, On Qingjing Peak, I'm afraid only Shizun has this level of cultivation. He only spoke one line, then paid her no more heed, minding only himself as he raised and lowered the axe, chopping trees in earnest. These trees were neither thin nor weak, yet the axe was half rusted. At this time, Luo Binghe was only 14 years old, so chopping was extremely taxing on him. Soon sweat poured down his face. Ning Ying Ying sat on an old log, watching him with her face propped in her hands. After a while, she was bored again and wheedled, Aluo, play with me. Luo Binghe had no time to even wipe his sweat. He continued to swing the axe, saying, I can't. Our Shishongs told me that after I finish chopping today's wood, I also have to carry water. If I finish chopping quickly, I can clear out some time to meditate. Ning Ying Ying pouted and said, Our Shishongs are really awful, always making you do this and that. From what I see, they're bullying you on purpose. I'll go back and tell Shizun. That'll guarantee they'll dare not do this anymore. Before, Shen Qingchu was treating this like it was a scene of the Proud Immortal Demon Way TV shoot, just passing through and enjoying a story between two childhood sweethearts. Upon hearing this, he paled in shock. No, you absolutely can't come tell me! What am I supposed to do? I can't be OOC! Who exactly should I punish? At this time, Luo Binghe was experiencing humanity's hardships to the fullest, yet he still had the heart of a white lotus, meaning a very pure character. He shook his head at Nin Ying Ying and said, Absolutely don't. I don't want to trouble Shizun over these types of small matters. Our Shizongs aren't ill-intentioned, they just see that I'm young and want to give me more chances to train. In that instant, it was as if Shen Qingchu saw behind him 10,000 rays of light and couldn't help but back up 3 steps, unable to look directly at a male lead with such high state of being, such a deep enlightenment. When Ning Ying Ying chattered, Luo Binghe finished chopping enough wood, putting the axe away. He randomly found a patch of relatively clean ground and sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed. Inside his heart, Shen Qingchu released a long sigh. In truth, the protagonist's overpowered nature had already started emerging even during the early misery-filled storyline. The cultivation manual Mingfan gave him was a fake. The more he trained following it, the more he should end up with absolute rubbish. But with his peerless talent and his body's half-demon blood, Luo Binghe had managed to grope out a path of his own by complete accident. Really too unscientific. When he was sighing, there came the sound of another set of jumbled footsteps. As soon as he heard, Shen Qingchu knew it wouldn't be good, that things were going to get bad. Mingfan came out, leading several low-ranked disciples. Upon seeing Ning Ying Ying, he delightedly came out to grab her hand. Xiao Shimei, I finally found you! How could you come to a place like this without saying anything? The back mountain area is so large. What if some dangerous beast or poisonous snake leapt out? Xizhong has something fun to show you. He naturally saw Luo Binghe silently sitting and ignored him as if he were air. But Luo Binghe, being very well-mannered, opened his eyes and called out Xizhong. Ning Ying Ying said, giggling, I'm not afraid of poisonous snakes or dangerous beasts. Besides, isn't Ah Luo with me? Ming Fan swept his gaze over Luo Binghe, squinting and humped. Dun dun dun! Okay, so that one last phrase where he said Xiao Shimei, it doesn't have an explanation for Shimei, but I know Xiao is like a way of saying little. It's another kind of like a nickname, a cutesy nickname. You'd call someone that's younger than you or something like that, you'd call them Xiao. There's going to be lots of nicknames and stuff like that because it's very common in Chinese language from my experience reading these books. We will stop there, even though we haven't quite caught up to where we are in the show. I think we'll be able to next time. I forgot how funny this book is, and it adds a lot more of his thoughts to the show that, you know, we don't get because obviously it's visual and not reading, so it's kind of fun to put them side by side and enjoy them that way. I think it'll be really fun to read this alongside the show. So every Thursday we'll read this and then we'll watch the episode that came out that week. So if you want to head over to the Discord and watch the show with us, please do. We've already watched episode 1 and 2, so we'll be on 3. If you'd like to watch it yourself and you haven't seen the previous episodes, they are now being posted to YouTube, so you can find them there. It's called Scumbag System. I think Shimei might be younger sex sister. I think you might be right there. Kind of like how, you know, they have all the Shidi. Yeah, so probably Shimei probably is younger sister. It is a fun book, and it gets even more fun. There's a lot of goofing on plot tropes and the ridiculousness of the main character. Apparently, there's a lot of comments on this book, and somebody posted on Twitter a lot of Chinese comments of people going, oh wait, oh my god, I can't believe this is gay. Like, people being surprised because the main character obviously doesn't discuss it and doesn't figure it out until late in the story that, oops, the main character has fallen in love with him. For those who don't realize, yes, this is a story about the main hero trying to save his life from being murdered by the protagonist, who, in doing so, accidentally makes the protagonist fall in love with him, and it's really cute and funny. Nothing like that's going to happen until he is an adult. The relationship in the first portion of the story, there's like 3 timelines, is very much like a teacher-student, but the student obviously has a crush on his teacher. Teacher's just oblivious and doesn't realize. For as smart as Shen Yuan is, he's so dumb. I love it. He's one of my favorite protagonists. Definitely my favorite aspect of this story is his character. He's so fun. But yeah, that is Proud Immortal Demon Way. No, that is Scum Villain. We will continue next Thursday, and I'm gonna head over to Discord to get the show ready. Thanks for watching. If you like what I do and you want to support it, links in the description to become a member and donate, purchase my books, check out my website, all that jazz, and probably gonna take the next couple days off since I've had so many freaking problems with this system, so many things breaking. I'm just gonna take off until next Monday and fix them, buy some things, figure out what I'm gonna do with certain stuff. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And then Monday we'll be back with the other book by this lady, Heaven Official's Blessing, and we'll do that. So yeah, see you guys next time. Thanks to all our members, of course, Daniel, Jeff, Phil, Billy. I think, was Billy here today? Thank you all for supporting the channel. I love you. You're amazing. Jessica was here for a bit. Pablo, you're all amazing and I love you. I will see you guys next time or in a minute for the show. Bye.